She's not here because she's good looking. She's here because there's an energy in her that matches your childhood. The mind does it all. The body doesn't do anything. Betrayal, it's lying. Betrayal's dressing it up. Where does lying start? It doesn't start in digital equipment. It starts in your heart.
Imagine spending nearly 3 decades in a marriage that feels more like a battleground than a partnership. That was the reality for our guest, Larry Bilotta, until he unlocked a secret that changed everything. Now, as a renowned relationship expert, Larry has dedicated his life to helping others find hope and healing in their marriages, proving that it's never too late to turn things around. From the chaos kid phenomenon to becoming an environment changer, Larry's insights are transforming lives and saving their marriages that seemed beyond repair. His approach challenges conventional wisdom, showing that it often takes just one person to initiate profound change in a relationship. Larry, welcome to Inspired by Success. We're eager to learn from your experiences and the powerful
Thank you,
techniques
Linda.
that you've developed to help couples rediscover love and connection. And one thing I just wanted to mention as well, yes, this is like a business podcast, but I find that relationships are super important in order to succeed in business as well. And Warren Buffett, his quote, "The most important decision many people will ever make is the spouse they choose." I can't overemphasize how important that is. And he's one of the most successful investors of all time. So welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, what was the turning point that led you to transform your own marriage after 27 years? Take us back to that journey.
Okay, so everybody starts out with somebody they marry that comes from a family. And so everybody's got a family back there. So when you marry, you don't marry a person, you marry a family. And when you marry a family, you're not really ready for it. You want to kind of keep denying that they're really there. But if the family that you're marrying into has got a really strong character in it, that's going to be very hard for you because now you're going to be at odds with that strong character. That strong character is entering your life at birthdays, at Christmas, at holidays. And so they're always invading you because that's a strong character in that family. There's so many combinations of people. When you said Warren Buffett says the most important choice is who you choose to marry, I want to say something about Warren Buffett's the choice of who you marry, because so many people are not choosing who they marry. The person that they marry is literally attracting, coming towards them because there's an energy going out of them calling for that person to come to them. And so the person who comes to them is the person who's most likely to help them heal their childhood pain. And this is like, well, come on, what are you talking about? This is like a mental thing. Like, yeah, it's a mental thing. It's a mind thing. So you attract a person that you're really attracted to, and then the chemicals turn on. Oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins, they all turn on when this person that's got that combination, that secret sauce that you really love. And why do you really love it? Because you want to call that person to you, because that person is going to help you reveal what's really broken in you. When I say broken, there's that little child within. We all have that child within our mind, which is 6 years old and got injured and wounded. And when that child got injured and wounded, person is in the mind, still hurting today, like it just happened. What a nutty thing that is. Like, why are you still upset? Because that little child is like living in that moment over and over and over again. And so that little child is in your subconscious mind. So when we attract this person, is you're like you're not choosing. You're not choosing that, like, oh, that woman's really good looking. No, that's not why she's here. She's not here because she's good looking. She's here because there's an energy in her that matches your childhood. And so I've been talking to thousands of people over the years, and I've got so many interviews with people. I'm learning about their childhoods. And so I'm talking about chaos to purpose. I have a scale. So chaos to purpose is 10, 9, 8. That's purpose. That's where your parents stay married and they love each other, and they may fight, which can get you a 9, or they fight a lot, which gets you to an 8, right? But if they're happy, they're really happy people, they're a model for how to have a relationship. And so that's what you have in you, a model relationship with your mom and dad. And so if you're a 10, then what happens is these people start to attract somebody that's going to match their pain. And so everybody's got pain from their first 10 years produce pain. And so the stories I've heard, the variety, it seems like it's infinite, the combinations of stories that there are. And so when people are attracting a mate, they're not looking at physical things and saying, I want those physical things. They're saying, I want the energy of that. And what's the energy of that? Well, it's something you're lacking in yourself, something you don't have in yourself. That's an energy that you just don't have. Like a person who's very hurt, feels very bad about themselves, they're going to try and find somebody who's got a similar kind of wound. And so now when that person comes to them, all of a sudden, all the chemicals turn on, and now I'm in love. Wow, you're in love? Yeah, it's the strangest thing. I'm in love. Well, you didn't really choose that person. To really choose the person you want to love, you'd do a background check. That's what you would do. You'd find out about their first 10 years with their mom and dad. You'd find out if they have any trauma or any injury or any stuff they suffered through. You'd start to ask a lot of questions because, hey, if I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you, I need to have a background, right? I need to know. Nobody's asking. Why aren't they
Yes.
asking? Because when those chemicals turn on, everything's turned off. The chemicals are on, knowledge is off, curiosity is off, everything turns off. And now you're just going closer and closer and closer until you're finally intimate. And finally, when you're really close, and now it's all sealed and settled, and you spend, because I heard so many stories of how many years people, we know each other 15 years, but we're married 2 years. Oh, isn't that an interesting story? Why would you wait so long to get married? Well, and then here comes the story, right? Of whatever that combination was. But everybody's got so many combinations. So I've been interviewing people. I've done over 1,000 interviews with people, asking them about their home and the home they came from and the person they marry. And so I keep talking to people who I call are stayers. They are stayers. The person they marry is a leaver. So a stayer and a lever, they're marrying each other all the time. And so what happens is the person who's a lever is the person who's raised lower on the scale. I found this over like 1,000 interviews that the person who's raised lower on the chaos to purpose scale is the first one to leave, the first one to fall in love with somebody else, the first one to be discontent, the first one to be troubled by personality quirks or whatever, the first one to accuse you of being a rotten parent, right? But it's always the person lowest on the scale. So the person who's lowest on the scale is called the lever. The person who's raised higher on the scale is called the stayer. And why is that person called the stayer? If you're raised higher on the scale, you have values. And so values are things like this is the way we finish our food. This is the way we keep our promises. This is the way we do what we say we're going to do. And so we have like 1,000 of those in our subconscious mind. And so those thousands of messages that are down there tell you how to live your life. If you're going to live your life that way, you don't want to be going down and remembering because the subconscious mind doesn't need to remember. It just knows it. And it gives it to the conscious mind and says, this is the way it's going to be. So now somebody's going to live in a marriage. And so now they're going to get through whatever 10 years, 15 years, 16 years, whatever it's going to be. And then something's going to happen. And what's going to happen is that person who's the most injured person, the person lowest on the scale, the weakest link, they're going to snap. And the reason they're going to snap is because they have subconscious messages that are very troubling. They're very hurtful. What they've been doing for years is they've been fighting those messages, saying, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. So messages will come up from the subconscious and say, you ought to do it this way. And then the person consciously says, no, I'm not doing that. That's the first step. The second step they do is, I'm doing this instead. And what they do is they're going to borrow a value from somebody else, from a television program, from a movie. They're going to borrow a value and they're going to act that out. And so that takes a lot of work. And it's really hard to 10, 15 times a day say no, no, no to the subconscious as you try and act out some value that you don't even own because you're raised lower on the scale. So just to explain the scale, it's 10, 9, 8. That's purpose. That's where mom and dad stay together and they raise you with purpose. A 7, 6, 5, they don't really raise you. They don't really raise you because they're really not paying attention to you as a person. And so you kind of raise yourself. And I've talked to so many of these people who kind of raise themselves, are very independent. And then chaos starts at 5 and goes down to 0. And what determines it is abandonment, abuse, and neglect. So it's some combination of physical or emotional, and it goes down the scale. And so the more abandonment, abuse, and neglect there is, the lower you are on the scale. So now you can kind of see when people have a childhood, they come to the marriage with a childhood. When I say, you got to do a background check, you're really looking for the chaos in their life. Because the more chaos they have, the more chaos you're going to have.
Mm.
And so, what the Millionaire Mind, the business book, there's a whole chapter talking about the people that choose to marry. And they talk about values like sewing your own clothes and saving money, right? Those are values. And so they talk about those values. And the people who actually build wealth and successfully build wealth are two people who have very similar values. In other words, nines marrying nines, or nines,
Mm.
tens marrying nines, or tens marrying eights, right? Those people who have marriage trouble, the troubles, they can go to a marriage seminar and clear them up right away. They really can heal pretty quick. For 15 years, I've been doing this, and I've been working with people. I've never had a 10 married to a 9 in my course. Not one time.
What do you mean? Oh,
I've
I get you now.
a
It's
10
because
married to a 9. So that means a
okay.
person from a really good home marries a person really, I don't have any of those people.
Wow. Okay.
What does that say that I've never in 15 years had a 9 married to an 8 or a 10 married to a 9? Why is that? Because people who come from good homes don't have marriage troubles that last and go on and fall apart because there's no weakest person in the marriage. There's two resilient people in the marriage, two purpose kids. I call them purpose kids there because they're raised with purpose. And because they're raised with purpose, they have that subconscious messages coming up, and boy, it's pretty easy. And sometimes they're raised with prosperity. Sometimes they're raised with responsibility. Sometimes they're raised with commitment and loyalty. Those are all really 10, 9, 8 kind of values. But if those people, those 10, 9, 8s, if they marry a 2 or a 1 or a 0 on the chaos scale, it's not going to last. Why not? Because the values are so far apart. But so what they do is they fall in love with the chaos kid, and the chaos kid's borrowing values to act like they have them, but they
Mm,
don't have them.
mm.
And
Wow.
because they don't have them, it's going to collapse. It's just a matter of what year. We talk about business owners. Business owners got a lot at stake because they lose half their wealth in a divorce. And so choosing the right person, like Warren Buffett says, is really important, right? So if you're going to fall in love, what's the Barry Manilow song, a Copacabana? What's the little warning? Don't fall in love. So what happens when you fall in love? You start losing your faculties of clarity and decision making, and you don't understand that chaos kids are going to bring you a chaos life. So what we
Wait.
have is we have a purpose person with purpose and good values. We've got a chaos kid with no values. They're borrowing values. And when they get together, they're going to be in love. And that love is not going to last very long because the chaos is going to start to take the purpose kid down. If it's a woman, the woman's the chaos kid. If it's a man who's the chaos kid, whoever's the chaos kid, they're going to try and drag the other person down. And so when I hear interviews, so many people, because I've got so many interviews I've recorded, I've written all this down. What I hear is, I don't even feel like I'm myself anymore. Why don't you yourself anymore? Because my chaos kid is trying to drag me into her chaos, or
Mm,
my chaos kid is trying to drag me into his chaos. And so that's why they don't feel like themselves. They're actually getting tested. So I have a 40-year marriage to my wife, and my 40-year marriage, when she died in 40 years, when she
sorry.
died, that was like the end of a really difficult testing for me. So in 27 years of that time, what happened to me is I learned to really love myself, which is something I didn't know how to do because I didn't know how to love myself because they were not teachers. They actually raised me in the twilight zone. So 765, I'm in the twilight zone where they don't really teach you or talk to you or guide you. As an illustration, my father graduated from a university and became a teacher, and he never mentioned a word about college, not a word. Like, how do you do that? I mean, how do you do that? You don't actually talk about college. You spent all that time in college and don't tell your children to go to college. You never did it because I was
Why
in the
is that?
twilight zone.
Oh. Wow. So 27 years. Okay, there's a lot of things that I wanted to unpack too, because it's very interesting there. While you were talking about the chaos theory, the chaos kid thing, I've been reading a books and I've heard it. Paul Bronson, he wrote a book called Find Love as well. And I read another book, Attachment Theory. I don't know if you heard of it. It sounds similar
Yes.
because the chaos kid is like the anxiety type. I think there's anxious, the secure attachment, and there's a few different attachment styles. But the one that you're talking about on the scale of 10 sounds like the secure attachment style. And the other one is the anxious, and there's the avoidant. That's it, anxious
Mhm.
and avoidant attachment styles, and they seem like the lower level on your end too. But I wanted to unpack this a bit about the chaos thing, the chaos kid patterns. How can somebody identify their own chaos kid patterns? Because a lot of people are brought up with trauma. I think self awareness is definitely key. And I do believe that you can heal as well. If you have, I don't know, there's certain therapies or there's self development and self healing. So, first of all, how can someone identify their own chaos kid patterns? And the other question is, once you heal that chaos kid, does it work better to save a relationship or save a marriage?
There's some people who don't really love the person they're married to because that person's testing them a lot. and they're discouraged and they don't want to keep on going because they don't have the spark to keep on going. Then I've talked to people who really love, so the guys who really love their wives, and they really are committed to them. But the woman they fall in love with are chaos kids. And so what really keeps him in the game is his love for her, because it's almost like a spiritual level love that just doesn't die. And that's really what it takes to get through the chaos thing. It takes love. You can't really go to logic or clever explanations of what it is. But what chaos is it's really three words. It's some form of abandonment, some form of abuse, and some form of neglect. And when you have those three, I like to think of them as families of ideas. Abandonment is a family of an idea. And so when you're thinking about abandonment, you're thinking about somebody leaves me, somebody kicks me out, somebody doesn't include me. So all that is abandonment ideas. Abuse, the obvious thing you think of abuse is being hit, but there's also emotional abuse
Mm.
that are all based on words and attitudes, right? And so there's all those, so abandonment and abuse, and then neglect is I was left alone a lot. I wasn't fed. We didn't have a roof over our head, right? All those kinds of neglects, right? So if you've got any of those three or the families of those three, you know that you're a chaos kid because it happened to you. Oprah Winfrey, right? I'm using a really big name here. She's got a book titled What Happened to You. She wrote it with a psychotherapist. And so she and the psychotherapist are actually talking about her childhood because she was traumatized with all the abandonment, abuse, and neglect that you would think of. He's telling stories about people he's working with, and she's telling stories about her life. And so the whole book is called What Happened to You? Because whatever happened to you, that's what creates the child inside being injured, and they stay injured for a long, long time because nobody's going down there to help that child heal. The whole idea of finding out for yourself, I like to use the scale of 10, 9, 8. That's purpose, because when you think of purpose, the only reason you're a 9 is because your parents did a lot of arguing. They did more arguing. Their relationship wasn't the best, but that's really still, they're giving you values. And because they're giving you values, you're a purpose kid. 7, 6, 5, they don't give you values because they're not talking or teaching. So at a 7, they're starting to say a little something to you, but they're not saying a lot. And they're not teaching you as a really unique person. And so 765 is the twilight zone. That's why I call it the twilight zone, because you don't actually know what you got. You're not sure. Like, I think it was a good child. I don't know if it was a good child. I don't remember. All those kinds of things. That's the sound of the twilight zone. So when you cross over into 5, you're entering into chaos. And
Mm.
so the thing you want to include as you look at abandonment, abuse, and neglect, which puts you in 5 to 0, it's about how mean spirited your parents were. Because the more mean spirited they were, the lower you go. And when I say mean spirited, some parents are not mean spirited. They're nice, kind of doting people that kind of wish they could be better, but they just can't because they just don't know how and they don't want to learn. And so they kind of goofed around and made mistakes. It wasn't mean spirited. But then you have some people with tempers and they're very angry and they're very mean. And when you put that meanness in here, that drives you down to a 2 and a 1 and a 0 because there's so much mean spiritedness about it from the mother or the father. And I've heard some just blow your mind away stories of mean spiritedness as they're raising children. Like, how do you put a child in that kind of environment, right? That scale is really helpful. I've been asking questions about that scale for 15 years. And so I always have the scale in front of me because why do I have to need that scale? I need that scale because who am I talking to? Am I talking to a 9 married to a 0? Or am I talking to a 2 married to a 1? Like, very big difference. Big
Mm.
difference. When once you have the scale, that changes a lot of things. When I'm talking to people about who are falling in love, I talk to people who are meeting people, because they're leaving a marriage, they're going into, right? I ask about, well, do you have a background check?
Mm.
And they don't want to think about it because they're falling in love, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want a background check. They don't want to know.
You know what?
Or
Like, now when you just mentioned the chaos kid, first of all, I'm also curious to know why would somebody, I think you mentioned it previously, but why would a purpose-driven person, like, just say a 10, wanna be with somebody that is under a 5? You know what I mean?
you want a great story? A great
Yeah,
story?
go.
Why would a 10 be wanting to be attracted to a 1? And so listen to this story. This is so the parents, remember purpose of parents, right? They give a lot of charity to a lot of people and they spend a lot of time caring for people in schools and churches and everything. And so when this really gets really high in life, that child is looking at taking care of the less fortunate. And so in that little child mind, thinking, so we should take care of the less fortunate, huh? Well, why don't I just marry the less fortunate?
Okay.
Because that's what they end up doing. They become attracted to the less fortunate because that's what they were taking care of all their lives. The parents were taking care of the less fortunate. And so that's a big reason why a lot of nines and tens are marrying twos and ones and zeros because they want to take care of the less fortunate. That's a real
Well,
thing.
that's interesting. I was raised by a single mum and she worked super hard. When I think about the scale that you're talking about, I'm probably a 5 or below. I don't know, but I'm
Okay.
self-aware of it. And I realized that my mother, yes, she worked hard and she didn't have the tools herself because I think she didn't tell me much about her story, but I think she was raised by her father. So that was another single parenting generation. And
Okay.
so she just did the best that she could. And I knew that like she was very driven, ambitious, worked hard, and she's had to provide for her 3 kids, me and my 2 older brothers. So, I have a bit of that upbringing as well, and she had boyfriends that were pretty bad and abusive, like, pretty
Okay.
bad. So that was a bit of a traumatic issue, and one of her boyfriends used to beat up my brothers too. So I've been raised in that chaotic environment as well, but I'm self-aware of it. And then I realized that when I read that book, I have that attachment theory where it's more of an anxious avoidant attachment style. And then I realized about the secure attachment style. So it's really a very interesting concept. But what are your thoughts on people with that chaos upbringing? Do you think can they succeed? Like, what are the steps they can do to heal? Because neuroplasticity, we can heal ourselves. We don't have to be stuck in the past. And as long as we're aware of our upbringing and our generational trauma, we can actually heal ourselves. Are there any tips that you can offer, any advice in order to have a successful relationship? Because you need to have a great relationship in order to succeed, especially in life and in business and raising kids as well. So,
So what
what are your
happens when
thoughts?
people divorce is they lose their wealth. They were building wealth together, but then they lose it. And once the wealth goes to two houses, all of a sudden it becomes diluted. The other thing that happens when they go separate two houses is the wealth starts to fall apart. It doesn't have the momentum of the together couple. The together couple are actually keeping, they both got their complementary roles. And when they're really in their successful mode, they really are developing a lot of ways to develop wealth. And they're putting the money aside and it's growing in value and all those things are happening. But boy, when the divorce comes, that thing is split down the middle and now it loses like its momentum. It doesn't have the momentum that it had when they were together. And so the wealth doesn't have momentum anymore. And so now the energy of the money, because that's what money is energy, the money is being split and divided, not just between two people, it's being divided in lots of different ways because the people, two people, they're coming out of a divorce, the children are very upset. And so that divorce is creating a lot of trauma in those children. And the parents don't really understand, like the kids will be okay and all that nonsense, right? The kids are never okay, especially the most sensitive kid is not okay. And so the most sensitive kid is sending out all this energy to the parents. Like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to us? And so that's literally affecting their money. And that's not something anybody really talks about, but their money is being affected. The spark that kept the wealth growing is now not there. And now it's all divided because the energy is divided. And now all this disturbance is in its place. And that's actually what takes wealth away. And
Wow.
that's actually another idea from the millionaire mind.
Let's talk about relationship dynamics. Why do you believe it only takes one person to heal a marriage?
So the reason it takes one, and I keep saying it takes one to heal a marriage, is because what we have is we have a man and a woman. They fall in love with each other. And then the woman says something to the man, and he reacts to it. Then she reacts to his reaction. Then she reacts to his reaction, and he reacts to her reaction, and they're reacting back and forth. And this can go on for years. They're reacting as a way of life, right? So if one person decides, I'm not going to live this life of a reactor, I'm going to become something called a creator. And what they're going to do as a creator is they're going to leave their wrong mind and they're going to go into their right mind. And that's what the creator does. The creator leaves the wrong mind and goes to the right mind. So what's the wrong mind? The wrong mind is every word that we have in the English language that's bad. Every word. And we got lots of them. Guilt, fear, doubt, worry, anxiety. We've got 1,000 of them, right? And when you look up the definitions, they're terrible. All of them are terrible, right? That's the wrong mind, right? Then on the other side, we have all the right mind. And the right mind is made of all the words we love: kindness, forgiveness, gentleness, gratitude, thankfulness, right? All those words, and we look them up, and the definitions are wonderful, right? So what we're doing is we're literally bouncing between the wrong mind and the right mind. And I ask the question all the time, if we look at 2 weeks of your life, what percent were you in the wrong mind and what percent were you in the right mind? Is it 50-50? Is it 80-20? Is it 90-10? And so they say, well, I think it's probably 80-20, wrong mind, 20% right mind. I said, okay, let's illustrate it this way. You're in a 20 horsepower motor and you're pulling an 80-pound weight underwater, right? Now you want to go somewhere. Where do you want to go? Well, you're going to have to take your 80-pound weight with you. What is that? That's 80 pounds of the wrong mind. That's all the ideas of the wrong mind, which never give us what we want. And so because it never gives us what we want, it's never going to take us where we want to go. So getting to the right mind is like the top of the list of what people are trying to do. Now, everybody calls it something else, like present day movement is around mindfulness, right? What is that? That's the right mind and all the ancillary versions of mindfulness. But it's all about calming down and getting in touch with your spiritual nature, right? That's a right minded idea, right?
Right.
But what is the wrong minded ideas? Everything we don't like, every word in the English language that's in that list of 1,000, right? We don't want it. And so everything that I'm trying to teach people has to do with getting out of the wrong mind and getting into the right mind. And so when they do that, one of the big ideas is I'm not going to live like a reactor. I'm going to become a creator. And what a creator is going to start to do is move to the right mind. And when they start moving to the right mind, and so what is all the self-help books trying to teach? They're trying to teach us to somehow get to this place, which, is called 1,000 different words, but I simplify it, just say it's the right mind. It's the right mind. It's every good word we have in the English language. So go to those. Don't go to these other ones. These other ones are
Yeah.
bad. They're not going to help you. They're going to hurt you.
That's so true because I've read somewhere that 80% of our thoughts are negative. So we have to be self aware of those thoughts as well. And if we can make it flip the other way around, that would help. And I guess you're right about improving, like sometimes blame, criticizing your partner or whatnot, not supporting them, that can definitely affect a relationship over the long run as well. Can you share any stories about business people? When I follow people like Grant Cardone's wife, Elena Cardone, she always supports her partner as well. Layla Hamosi, these are the people that I like to follow. They're very supportive of their partners, especially, and their partners do so well in business because they've got
Yes.
a very strong support network there. So, can you share any stories of any of your clients that have in business that have had a lot of success because of the right partner or a lot of failures because of the wrong partner?
So since we're going to record this message, I want to highlight that people are not going to make a big deal of. And what happens is when we have purpose kids marrying each other, we have a great situation. And so you talked about some authors that are probably purpose kids. But if they're not purpose kids, they could be very determined chaos kids. And they're called buckers, Buckers, like a bucking bronco. And so, what is a bucker? A person who throws off the rider. And what's the rider? It's mom and dad's messages that they put in the subconscious mind, right? So, what are the messages? They're all very bad. They're all very wrong minded ideas in the subconscious. And because they're wrong minded ideas, you can have a very successful person, a very determined person, a very strong willed person bucking their childhood, and they will
Mm.
buck. And remember, it's a 3-step process. Step number 1 is stop. I'm not doing that. Go away. I'm not doing that. That's the first step. The second step is I'm doing this instead. And that second step is I'm going to borrow a value that I believe in, I wish for, I wish I had. I don't have it. I don't own it, but I'm going to use it because I borrow it. And then the third step is I'm going to act it out. And so when you act it out, you're going to encounter things in the world that are going to test your belief in that, right? So these very successful people can be very successful as buckers. And what happens, these buckers are very conscious of the messages from their subconscious. They're very aware of it. Like, nope, I'm not doing that. I know I'm not doing that. So they
Yeah.
become very determined and very aware. But what happens to buckers is they become very tired because what they're doing is they're fighting the messages of their subconscious. And it's a very, very hard place to fight the messages with willpower, by the way. Willpower. They're fighting the messages of their subconscious with willpower. And it is exhausting. And I have seen this over the years I've been working with buckers. I've seen them snap. and they snap, and all of a sudden, what comes into place when that snap happens? What happens? Well, the rushing in of all these ideas they were fighting all these years, they come rushing in. And what happens? And this is called midlife crisis. And so the ideas come rushing in, and all of a sudden, the staying spouse says, never interested in that before, never said that before, never did that before. All the things they hated, they now are doing. And so that is the bucker. If you're living a life like a bucker, I kind of come to believe as I watch people in prison and people with real hard situations, they find a spiritual path. They find some kind of spiritual path, which to me appears to be the only answer for buckers, because what they're doing is they're trying to stop the subconscious from doing what it does. And you can't use your will to fight that. It's exhausting and you'll never last. That's my warning. I wish I could tell the world that. Very few people are listening to that. They don't
Yeah,
want to
no,
hear it.
because I agree, but, like, with Layla Hormozi, I hear her story, and she's had a pretty chaotic past too because her mum neglected her, and
Hmm.
the story was really inspiring because she just fought it and said, "I'm not gonna be like that." Her and Hormozi, they're in the business world, they're just, like, phenomenal, that everyone aspires to be like them, they're successful, they've got it all, and I don't know if he was brought up with a single dad, Alex Mosey, and I think he was trying to find his dad's attention a lot of the times. They're not perfect upbringing, both of them, but they're very successful together, and I find that incredibly beautiful. But you find that there's not much success
Well,
coming from.
it's very hard to be a bucker because something's going to happen. Because when your willpower is going to give out, because one day when you're 40, when you're 52, when you're 61, it's going to give out. Because that's a lot of pressure that you're putting on your subconscious to say, no, stop. I'm not letting this thing that exists exist in me. I'm not going to allow that. And so that's a lot of fighting. And so the job of the bucker is to really make peace with their subconscious. And that's really what the job is. The job is to make peace with their subconscious. The role of what are we talking about here? We're talking about the inner child, right? The inner child is in our minds. And this child is 6 years old. And this child is wounded. And this child is living the wound over and over again. And so when you calm down and slow down and start to tune into that inner child and start to hear, and the guy I'd recommend for this is the author Richard Schwartz, who invented internal family systems. And so he has a book called No Bad Parts. And I highly recommend that because No Bad Parts is a great way to remember that the mind is a vast, unfathomable thing. Nobody's ever drawn a picture of a mind. Nobody's ever been able to locate a mind. Nobody knows where it is, right? But that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the mind and the vastness of the mind. And so what he's doing is he's actually giving us a way to learn about the mind and realize that there's parts in the mind that have their own personality. They have their own will that, like, boy, look very independent. And so, what Richard Schwartz has done is he spent 40 years studying and working with people and helping them because where he discovered parts is people say, I have a part of me that, and then they fill in the blank. I have a part of me that's telling me this. I have a part of me that, right? And so he has got a whole explanation of parts. And so when we talk about a part being that wounded inner child, Richard Schwartz is a good place to start with no bad parts because that's what's a great message. There is no bad parts. So he's been into hell and back and come to find out there is no bad parts. Like, really? I had no idea.
Interesting.
The world told me there was.
That's something that I'll definitely look into. We know that communication is just super important. Open communication and being assertive. I think before you're getting in a relationship, you have to talk about your values, have agreements in place too, in order to have a good long term relationship. So, communication we know is key and emotional connection. But what does it really mean when a partner says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you?
I like that. That's a published public statement now. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. So why does the person put in I love you in the beginning? Why is that even there? Because I'm not in love with you. That's the punchline. Why do you even say I love you, but? Because that's the worst thing you can say to a person. Because I don't love you. Obviously, I don't love you because I'm not in love with you. Therefore, I don't love you, right? So why do you put that there? They put it there because they're trying to ease the pain for the other person. I love you, but let me wipe all that out. I'm not in love with you.
Wow, don't
That's the
accept it.
most painful thing. That's why they add the first line, I love you. Because, like,
Okay.
I love you, does that mean there's hope for us? No, I didn't mean it.
How can couples actually improve their emotional connection without solely relying on words?
Now we're getting to the whole idea of the mind, because the mind can communicate, because minds are joined. Bodies are not joined, but minds are joined. And because minds are joined, we realize it's like there's 7 invisible energies coming out of all of us, like a waterfall is pouring out. And what's pouring out is my mood, my attitude, my sensitivity, my feelings, my energy, my frequencies, and my vibrations. All 7 of those are always pouring out. They don't turn off. They're always pouring out. Now, we do not have any way to acknowledge those things are there. All we have is English words, my mood, my attitude, my sensitivity. So I put them together as 7 because these are the 7 invisible energies that are pouring out like a waterfall. So what are they carrying? They're carrying everything that reactors are going to react to. And so when you're married to a reactor, that person's going to react to everything that's coming out of that waterfall, all that energy, all that broadcast energy. And so when you think a thought like, you're the most important, valuable person in my world, I love you so much, right? That thought is in that waterfall, that thought. And when you think about, wait, if that thought's in the waterfall, what else is in the waterfall? Well, everything you're feeling is in the waterfall. Your mood, your attitude, your sensitivity, your frequency, your vibration, everything's there. And so there's no secrets. Everything's pouring out. Everybody who's a reactor knows. They already know. And so what happens with people who are reactors is they react to everything that's pouring out of you. And what they do is they make decisions based on what they're feeling from those 7 energies. And so if they're starting to feel you're in your wrong mind, they're going to be very bothered by that and they're not going to like it. And then they're going to start making, well, maybe I should really kind of start doing something on my own. Maybe that woman is a lot more important than I thought she was. Maybe this boyfriend is a good idea. Maybe I should lose weight, become more attractive. Right? All kinds of things are happening because of the waterfall of energy that's coming out of you, right? Those 7 energies are always carrying it, and you can't use your 5 senses to know. My sight, my hearing, my taste, my touch, those 5 senses are no use to you because they can't tell you about what's coming out of you. But you just got to know they're always coming out. Whatever I'm feeling is always coming out. So when you're talking about communication and you're thinking about, I could say nothing, I could say no words at all, and everything I'm feeling is going to get through.
Yeah.
Everything. And so that's the greatest form of communication, the mind. Not talking. How many times there's thousands of times I hear this. But my husband's not here. How are we going to get along? How are we going to cooperate? How are we going to communicate? We're not face to face. We're not, right? That's because everybody's focused on the body and they think the body is everything and the mind is nothing. Well, that's a real popular thing. The mind is nothing, the body's everything. So the body solves all the problems, but it doesn't. The mind solves problems. So the 3 things that actually create all the things that the mind can do is when you think a thought, when you imagine a picture, and you believe a belief. I do the demonstration of give me a moment when you were really happy and really in love. And so they come up with the moment, the time, and they come up with a place. And I name the place, like some park or something. And I name the park and I say, okay, there's a picture of a thought. And now we want a picture in imagination. What did it look like? What did it feel like? What did it sound like? And so the person talks some more about what it felt like, what it sounded like, right? Okay, now you got 2 things. You got a thought, you got a feeling, and now it's time to come up with a belief. What did you believe was true at that moment, at that instant? And so they now tell about the feeling they felt and what they believed was true at the time. Now I ask them, now how do you feel? Oh, I feel a lot better.
Mm,
So that actually is using the mind consciously to think a thought, imagine a picture, and believe a belief. It's work to do that. That's why most people don't do it, but it's work to do it. But it
right.
changes the world. It changes your world. You see things differently. You experience things differently because you're actually realizing the mind does it all. The body doesn't do anything, but the mind does it all. And so
Mm,
we're all, as a society, we're really caught up on bodies and really in love with bodies and conversations and all that. And we think the mouth and the body is the be all and the end all, but it's not. The mind is really what matters. And so
And it all
that's
just
what
starts.
when we talk about leaving the wrong mind and getting the right mind, that's where we're talking about mind so much.
But it
So
all just starts with a thought too. So,
yeah, but when you think about entrepreneurs, they have a thought of an idea, and they have an idea that people want this, right? That's their idea. People want this, whatever, fill in the blank of what this is, right? People want a nutritional shake that's in a 4-ounce canister, right? Whatever the idea is, they believe in it. And so what happens is they start talking about it and they start winning people over to their idea. And that person starts talking to somebody else about it. And so now we got a whole group of people talking about it. And that's how ideas grow. They grow because somebody believes in them. And so that's the power of the mind. That's how great businesses are born, right? You have Steve Jobs type level people, and they have their thing that they believe in, and people write books about them, right? And they talk about their quirky characters right? And all their different ways and stuff. Steve Jobs was like an unattractive personality, right? But he was a brilliant mind because he could see things that technical people couldn't see. And so what he would do is he said 1,000 songs on one device, right? And what did the engineers do? They said it can't do that, right? So what he did is he kept staying with it. He kept believing in it. And so that's really what we're doing when we're in relationships. We're getting one idea and we're saying, I'm sticking with this idea because I believe in it. And that's really what entrepreneurs do. They stick with one idea and they believe in it. And they don't fall apart and stop telling a story about what they believe in. They keep on telling the story, which leads us to the whole power of a storyteller. That's really what great entrepreneurs are. They're great storytellers. Tom Peters wrote the book Search of Excellence and books related to it. And he came up with the idea that when they're passing on the culture to younger people, they say, this is the way we do it here. And so that's what they have in business when they're successful. This is the way we do it here. And so that's how they pass on the culture, like clean restrooms. This is the way we do it here.
mm.
Clean plates, clean silverware. This is the way we do it here.
In this digital day and age where digital landscape with dating and relationships, people can just DM anyone and there's, sex sells, there's Instagram models and whatnot. So I want to know your thoughts on betrayal and trust and what's your advice to someone dealing with betrayal in a relationship, because it's so easy for somebody to get tempted and from a DM. And then what are your thoughts on that in this digital day and age?
So this has to do with how right-minded or wrong-minded you are. And it has to do with what percent you are. So if you live in the wrong mind, because that's the way you were raised, if you were raised in the wrong mind, you've got a lot of really bad ideas, a lot of ideas that are not helping you. Sex is one of them, right? Why is the porn industry the biggest thing that ever happened to the earth? Why is that? Because there's a really high motivation because sexual energy is behind it and capitalism is behind it and money is behind it, right? So this big industry is born all built around the human sex drive. And so there's all kinds of weird distortions in it, right? So if somebody's going to have the ability to not control their sex drive, that would be a wrong-minded idea. I got to have the sex from a certain person that looks a certain way. That's a digital opportunity for corruption, right? Because I'm wrong-minded. But if we talk about betrayal, what is betrayal? It's lying. Betrayal's dressing it up. It's just lying. You're just lying. You're telling somebody a thing that they don't want to know, don't want to hear, and you're going to make them hear something else. You're just lying. And why are you lying? Because you have something in you that says a wrong-minded idea that says lying is perfectly legitimate thing to do. Like it's really good to tell a little white lie. That's a phrase they came up with in lying, in the lying business, right? So when you can't be open and you can't be truthful, you're living on a really bad value. And so what does digital age do? The digital age just takes secrets and makes them more secret. Thanks to people like Apple, all kinds of secrets are being revealed, right? Because things are coming out like, I have my account in here, but all of a sudden she found a text from over there, right? Wasn't supposed to find it, right? But what is
Connected
betrayal?
devices.
Yeah, it's just lying, right? And
Yeah.
where does lying start? It doesn't start in digital equipment. It starts in your heart. The lying is in your heart. And if the lying's in your heart, you're just really screwed because now you're in a wrong-minded thought system. You believe in a wrong-minded thought system. And what are you trying to do with using this lying, betrayal? You're trying to get something that you don't have. That's what you're just trying to do. You're trying to get something you don't have, and you're getting it. Listen, I'm going to stay married to you, but I'm going to go get her too at the same time because I'm impatient and I have no patience, right? What is the digital age going to do? The digital age is going to screw up your weird desire to lie. And so the ability to have a really great relationship really starts in the heart and in the mind, that I want to be true to the person I believe in. And even if that person's not perfect, even if that person's got faults, that's why it's so important that you have some kind of spiritual foundation that you believe in. Because if you don't have it, you start to twist and turn into all kinds of distortions. But that's having the grounding of a spiritual foundation. And when you've got that, that's something you can stick to and something you can check in with that keeps you grounded in the digital age, supposedly blamed for all kinds of things. It's not
Yeah,
the
that's
digital
very
age that is the
powerful.
problem.
That's a different perspective as well. And I'm always curious to know about how to make lasting relationships. But one thing I want to ask, we'll talk about divorce prevention. What should someone do if their partner announces that they want a divorce?
The best thing to do is not wait. Okay. I just talked to a lady today, 40 years, married 40 years. Okay. She's married 40 years to the son of a farmer. And what did the farmer teach? Hard work all the time, hard work. And that's what he did. He worked hard, just like he was taught. He worked hard, hard, hard. And so she met him, and she has a mother who was very accommodating to her troubled husband. And so that mother, taught to be accommodating. Just make it possible for him to do whatever he wants to do. And so the mother did that. And so she saw that. So, oh, I guess I have to be accommodating. I have to have a way to make him do everything he wants. So he did two things. Number one, he worked very hard. Number two, he didn't talk. He didn't talk. Well, we can picture a farmer not talking, no emotions. There was not an affection at home besides that. So no affection in the home. And so she's got a need for affection, but she's giving it up and saying, well, I have to be accommodating. That's what mom did. And so she was accommodating to this guy. And he went 40 years until finally a woman took an interest in him and started to give him feelings that he wanted to feel. And all of a sudden, he's trying to find a way to use the digital age to find another relationship.
Oh,
40 years. So she's all distraught. Why is she all distraught? Because she did not realize that he has a childhood. It's almost like the childhood made him a worker, and he was obsessed with work, and he worked a farm, and he was obsessed with work. And so she was allowing him to be obsessed with work. She did not require him to talk to her. She did not require him to open up and be honest. She did not require her to say, I'm feeling a strain here. It's year 23. We're going to make it to year 40, but that's not going to be good. So we need to start talking now. She didn't do that. And so that's the time to do it. That's the time that you need to open up and say, you know what? We're heading for a divorce. Why? Because you are literally programmed to work. Your whole life is work. That's what your father made. And so what I'm doing is I'm allowing you to be a workhorse. That's what I'm allowing you
mm,
to do. But I need emotion. I need connection. I need relationship. I need communication. I want to feel feelings, and I want to feel them with you. Right? Well, that would be a very honest thing for her to say at year 27. Right? But she didn't do that. She just
oh
kept going
gosh.
on just like her mother instructed her. Allow him to do whatever he wants to do. Right?
It's sometimes hard to have those touchy conversations, you know what I mean?
It
Like,
is hard.
I can
It
I
is
can
hard.
relate because like, sometimes women want to have more affection and more love, but the man is working, you know what I mean? So it's hard to communicate that until breaking point, and that seems like what's happened there.
I'm using the 40-year marriage because I just got off the phone with this woman, and I'm thinking, well, there it is again, right? The same old, I'm going to allow him to do what he does. I'm going to allow him to do it because my mother told me to allow him to do anything he wants. And then here we are. We're 40 years later, and now it's falling apart. And now she's all distraught. She waited to the end, is what she did, right? So she loves him very much. And what is he doing? He's going, well, I don't know if I love you for 40 years. I don't know if I got, and I'm so confused, he's saying. That's what he's saying. I'm so confused. Why is he so confused? Because he's living in his wrong mind. And when you're in your wrong mind, it's very easy to be confused about everything. And so there it is. I just got off the phone, right? There's a real situation.
Wow, I feel for that lady. What common mistakes could be avoided when trying to save a marriage?
Okay, so the first mistake that everybody makes is the emotional mistake. They beg, they plead, they try to bargain, they make promises, like all that stuff. Why is that so wrong? because now it's all desperate. It's all desperate. Like I now am faced with losing what I had, and now I'm desperate. And once you're desperate, you're a mess. You're not good for anybody. You're not good for yourself. You're not good for the person you're in a relationship with. And so you're not good for your kids, right? So nobody's getting help from your desperation. So that's the first mistake, the desperation that you end up in. I always advise people, because there's so many thoughts coming into the mind in a storm, a thought storm, I call it. There's a thought storm coming in. And because there's a thought storm, the only word that you can handle, the only word you can remember is the word calm. And that's the word you have to hold on to because that will slow everything down. And it slows the thought storm down slow enough so you finally can get to the level where you say, I need an intention thought. I need to think an intentional thought. And what is an intentional thought? I want this to happen like this, and whatever the this is. I want to slow down. I want to recognize that I'm in a difficult spot, but I think we can still talk. I think there's something savable here. I think there's something in him that, despite his midlife crisis, I think there's some part of him that still is connected to me, right? Slow down, calm down. And so, with the word calm slows you down, but then you get in a calm picture because we have a thought, calm. Now we have a calm picture. What's a calm picture? A calm picture is anything that's calm to you. If you have a calm picture of yourself in Hawaii, then that's the thing that's going to calm you down. And so that's a part of all going to one word because the thought storm is coming from the subconscious mind and it's a storm. It's a storm of chaotic thought, lots of wrong minded ideas. And so, in that, those wrong minded ideas are expectations, judgments, all kinds of fears. And because you have to sort that out, you've got to sort it out by getting it down to the level of an intention thought. An intention thought is the thought that I clearly want this one thing. And when I calm down, I can slow down enough where I can actually think this one thing. And that helps people because the thought storm will kill you. It'll kill you as it does
Mm.
so many people I talk to.
Do you know what I see? Relationships that are suffering. There's a lot of resentment going on and criticism and contempt. And I know that that's the ultimate relationship killer as well. So, what are your thoughts on you can't change your partner, you have differences. Those differences is what makes people argue and cause resentment. So, how can someone shift their mindset from trying to change their partner to changing themselves? And have you seen a benefit in that? And does that positive change reflect on their partner wanting to become a better person as well?
So the way I think about it is the vision. The vision is that you leave a life of a reactor because you admit I am a reactor. I'm reacting to all kinds of things, and I'm going to become a creator. That means I'm going to live in my right mind. I'm going to start to think right-minded thoughts. I'm going to start to fill my mind with right-minded thoughts. And so when I start moving in that direction, the first thing I meet is all kinds of anger and frustration. So the anger and frustration starts at the beginning of the line and keeps on going as you continue to keep chasing the right-minded thoughts. As you keep become more and more right-minded, you start to become happier. You start to become more satisfied. You start to become more at peace because you're moving to the right mind. And as you keep on doing that, that person, the reactor, remember the waterfall I was talking about, that waterfall of energy is always coming out of you. And the reactor is feeling it all the time. So they start in the beginning with, I'm like this, I'm mad at this, I'm mad at it. And they get down to the end. And what do they say? I want to be like you. That's got to be the most inspiring thing ever, right? The picture that one day my troubled person is going to say, I want to be like you. How do you get to the place where you can say, I want to be like you? Well, you got to get in your right mind. You got to get out of your wrong mind and be in your right mind. And that takes a vision. The vision of right minded is the goal. Where we're talking about all this bickering and arguing and demanding and all that, right? All that stuff is wrong minded. And when you realize it's wrong minded, that's not what I want to be. I want to be right minded. You're going back to the vision. The vision is I'm going to be right minded in every condition, in every circumstance, I'm going to be right minded. And so that's the determination that you're focused on. And that starts to change all your energy. And so all the energy that's coming out of you starts to change. And so what happens is that person, that reactor, they're taking all that new energy of yours. There's no conversations. There's nobody telling anybody anything. Nobody's doing any teaching, right? All the energy is coming out of you, and it's all right-minded energy. And as it continues to come wave after wave after wave, the reactor is absorbing it and collecting it and thinking about it and secretly, privately sleeping about it and waking up and thinking about it again, right? They're taking this waterfall of right-minded thought and they're starting to move towards, I want to be like you. Like, you're so calm. You're so at ease. You're so this, you're so that, right? Fill in the blank of all these things that they're seeing. Like, I could never do that. I can't do that. How come you can do it? Right? They're asking that because they want to be what you are. And that's really
Mm.
why it takes one to heal a marriage. One person leads, the second person follows. That's the reason it takes one, because one person leads and one person follows.
So even if that other person, if it's fully opposite of the calm and they're angry and negative, low vibration, totally opposite of the calmer person, what
Yes.
are the reactions there?
Yeah, because that's gonna happen, because that's the beginning of the line, right? They're gonna fight and because they live in the wrong mind. You lived in the wrong mind too, because you were a reactor. So you were a reactor, married to a reactor, you were both in the wrong mind, you couldn't solve anything. And so now you're committed to being in the right mind. And so now you're moving towards some kind of spiritual foundation that'll help you go into the right mind. So I've talked to Catholics, Protestants, Mormons, people with East Indian beliefs, people with Taoist beliefs, all kinds of people with all kinds of belief systems. But what they're doing is they're attaching themselves to some kind of spiritual foundation, which helps them move into their right mind. Because I don't think without a spiritual belief system that you can actually move into the right mind.
Wow. So what self-improvement techniques have you found most effective for relationship healing?
I think the most powerful thing I've seen is people who are determined to become right minded. That is the best technique. Moving to your right mind is the best thing that can happen because what happens, so I have a course that people get into. When they get into the course, they get into quote unquote save their marriage. But what happens because they're moving to the right mind, their money gets better, their relationship with the kids gets better, their relationship with their health gets better, the relationship with their savings gets better, the relationship with their house gets better, everything gets better. Even their relationship to insects gets better. Animals gets better. Everything is better. Why? Because in the right mind, everything improves. In the wrong mind, everything gets worse. It's just a real simple idea. Wrong mind, every word in the English language we don't like. Right mind, everything in the English language we like. Well, how simple is that? Just move out of this place and go to that place. That's all this is. That's all we're
I
doing.
like it. If there was one key message you want to leave with the audience, what would that be?
I think it would be that there's always a way because we have kind of a rat on our ship. We use the analogy of a ship. If I have a rat on the ship, that's very bad because when I have a rat on the ship, the rat tells me all kinds of bad things, brings me all kinds of wrong minded ideas. So one of the things the rat keeps on saying is there's no way. There's no way. There's no way all the time. Somehow you're getting the idea that there's no way, that's impossible, that can't possibly happen. Ah, it's amazing, I can't believe it, right? How do we, all these expressions that we say. I say the phrase, there's always a way, because there's always a way opens up every possibility. When you say there's always a way to yourself, what you're really saying is in this universe of billions of possibilities, every possibility is open. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know when I'm going to do it. I don't know anything about the techniques or anything like that. But I'm saying the phrase that opens up possibility in my mind. Because what the rat does is the rat tells you there's no way. You can't do it. There's just no way. And I'll tell you, when you're around a person who's negative and critical, you're literally in the smoke of wrong mindedness. And now you're being affected by there's no way. I like the phrase, there's always a way, because when you say there's always a way, you're opening up the universe of possibilities in your mind. And that's the most important. The universe of possibilities has to open. And there's always a way is the phrase that does it.
Wow, that's beautiful. Guys, if you found this valuable and just as helpful, please do me a favor. If you're listening on the podcast, hit that follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. It does help the channel grow. Thank you so much for your time, Larry. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Linda.
And yeah, I wish you all the best.
Okay, thank you.